The Emerald Tablets of Thoth the Atlantean. Tablet 1. The History of Thoth the Atlantean. I, Thoth the Atlantean, master of mysteries, keeper of records, mighty king, magician, living from generation to generation, being about to pass into the halls of Amenti, set down for the guidance of those that are to come after, these records of the mighty wisdom of great Atlantis. In the great city of Kior, on the island of Undal, in a time far past, I began this incarnation. Not as the little men of the present age did the mighty ones of Atlantis live and die, but rather from eon to eon did they renew their life in the halls of Amenti, where the river of life flows eternally onward. 100 times 10 have I descended the dark way that led into light, and as many times have I ascended from the darkness into the light, my strength and power renewed. Now for a time I descend, and the men of Chem shall know me no more, but in a time yet unborn will I rise again, mighty and potent, requiring an accounting of those left behind me. Then beware, O men of Chem, if you have falsely betrayed my teaching, for I shall cast ye down from your high estate into the darkness of the caves from whence ye came. Betray not my secrets to the men of the north or the men of the south, lest my curse fall upon ye. Remember and heed my words, for surely I will return again and require of thee that which ye guard. Aye, even from beyond time and from beyond death will I return, rewarding or punishing as ye have requited your trust. Great were my people in the ancient days, great beyond the conception of the little people now around me. Knowing the wisdom of old, seeking far from within the heart of infinity knowledge that belonged to earth's youth. Wise were we with the wisdom of the children of light who dwelt among us. Strong were we with the power drawn from the eternal fire. And of all these, greatest among the children of men was my father, Thoth, keeper of the great temple, link between the children of light, who dwelt within the temple, and the races of men who inhabited the 10 islands. Mouthpiece after the 3 of the dweller of Unal, speaking to the kings with the voice that must be obeyed. Grew I there from a child into manhood, being taught by my father the elder mysteries, until in time there grew within the fire of wisdom, until it burst into a consuming flame. Naught desired I but the attainment of wisdom, until on a great day the command came from the dweller of the temple that I be brought before him. Few there were among the children of men who had looked upon that mighty face and lived, for not as the sons of men are the children of light when they are not incarnate in a physical body. Chosen was I from the sons of men, taught by the dweller, so that his purposes might be fulfilled, purposes yet unborn in the womb of time. Long ages I dwelt in the temple, learning ever and yet ever more wisdom, until I too approached the light emitted from the great fire. Taught me he the path to Amenti, the underworld where the great king sits upon his throne of might. Deep I bowed in homage before the lords of life and the lords of death, receiving as my gift the key of life. Free was I of the halls of Amenti, bound not by death to the circle of life. Far to the stars I journeyed until space and time became as naught. Then, having drunk deep of the cup of wisdom, I looked into the hearts of men, and there found I greater mysteries and was glad. For only in the search for truth could my soul be stilled and the flame within be quenched. Down through the ages I lived, seeing those around me taste of the cup of death and return again in the light of life. Gradually from the kingdoms of Atlantis passed waves of consciousness that have been one with me, only to be replaced by spawn of a lower star. In obedience to the law, the word of the master grew into flower. Downward into darkness turned the thoughts of the Atlanteans, until at last in his wrath arose from his Aguanti the dweller. This word has no English equivalent. It means a state of detachment. Speaking the word, calling the power. deep in earth's heart. The sons of Amenti heard, and hearing, directed the changing of the flower of fire that burns eternally, changing and shifting, using the logos, until that great fire changed its direction. Over the world then broke the great waters, drowning and sinking, changing earth's balance until only the temple of light was left standing on the great mountain of Undal, still rising out of the water. Some there were who were living, saved from the rush of the fountains. Called to me the Master, saying, Gather ye together my people. Take them by the arts ye have learned of, far across the waters, until ye reach the land of the hairy barbarians, dwelling in caves of the desert. Follow there the plan that ye know of. Gathered I then the people, and entered the great ship of the Master. Upward we rose into the morning. Dark beneath us lay the temple. Suddenly over it rose the waters, vanished from earth until the time appointed was the great temple. Fast we fled toward the sun of the morning until beneath us lay the land of the children of Kim. Raging, they came with cudgels and spears, lifted in anger, seeking to slay and utterly destroy the sons of Atlantis. Then raised I my staff and directed a ray of vibration, striking them still in their tracks, as fragments of stone of the mountain. Then spoke I to them in words calm and peaceful, telling them of the might of Atlantis, saying we were children of the sun and its messengers. Cowed I them by my display of magic science, until at my feet they groveled when I released them. Long dwelt we in the land of Kim, long and yet long again, until obeying the commands of the Master, who while sleeping yet lives eternally, I sent from me the sons of Atlantis, sent them in many directions, that from the womb of time wisdom might rise again in her children. Long time dwelt I in the land of Kim, doing great works by the wisdom within me. Upward grew into the light of knowledge the children of Kim, watered by the rains of my wisdom. Blasted I then a path to Amenti, so that I might retain my powers, living from age to age, a son of Atlantis, keeping the wisdom, preserving the records. Great grew the sons of Kim, conquering the people around them, growing slowly upwards in soul force. Now for a time I go from among them into the dark halls of Amenti, deep in the halls of the earth, before the lords of the powers, face to face once again with the dweller. Raised I high over the entrance a doorway, a gateway leading down to Amenti. Few there would be with courage to dare it, few past the portal to dark Amenti. Raised over the passage, I, a mighty pyramid, using the power that overcomes earth force or gravity. Deep and yet deeper placed I a fourth house or chamber. From it carved I a circular passage reaching almost to the great summit. There in the apex set I the crystal, sending the ray into the time-space, drawing from the force from out of the ether, concentrating upon the gateway to Amenti. Other chambers I built and left vacant to all seeming, yet hidden within them are the keys to Amenti. He who in courage would dare the dark realms, let him be purified first by long fasting. Lie in the sarcophagus of stone in my chamber. Then reveal I to him the great mysteries. Soon shall he follow to where I shall meet him. Even in the darkness of earth shall I meet him. I, Thoth, Lord of wisdom, meet him and hold him and dwell with him always. Builded I the great pyramid, patterned after the pyramid of earth force, burning eternally so that it too might remain through the ages. In it I builded my knowledge of magic science, so that it might be here when again I return from Amenti. Aye, while I sleep in the halls of Amenti, my soul roaming free will incarnate, dwell among men in this form or another. Hermes, thrice born. Emissary on earth am I of the dweller, fulfilling his commands so man might be lifted. Now return I to the halls of Amenti, leaving behind me some of my wisdom. Preserve ye and keep ye the command of the dweller. Lift over upwards your eyes toward the light. Surely in time ye are one with the Master. Surely by right ye are one with the Master. Surely by right ye are one with the All. Now I depart from ye. Know my commandments, keep them and be them, and I will be with you, helping and guiding you into the light. Now before me opens the portal. Go I down in the darkness of night. The interpretation. The passing of Thoth into the halls of Amenti was not the change we call death. He merely placed his physical body beneath the ray of force later referred to as the cold flower of life, where it would be preserved indefinitely. As Thoth, he would not return, but while his body rested in suspended animation, his consciousness entered many bodies and lived many lives. Kior was the city of the priesthood of Atlantis. On Undal, the island just opposite Unal, there were two cities, or rather two divisions of one great city that covered the island. The island was entirely surrounded by terrace walls and divided across the center by a high wall. Kior faced Unal and was occupied by the priesthood, while the other side of the island was known as Chien and was occupied by the philosophic and scientific groups. No one was allowed on either part of the island excepting by a pass signed by the leaders of a group. The mighty ones referred to were the Adepts of Atlantis, and these were 13 in number. Thothmes, father of Thoth, was head or chief of the 13. They operated on the principle of what later became the Great White Lodge. They knew the way to the halls of Amenti, where for a time they would lie beneath the flower of life and rejuvenate their bodies. Unlike the masters, they did not leave their bodies there while they incarnated in other bodies, but only bathed in the fire of life and renewed their bodies. Thoth himself had descended to Amenti 1,000 times to renew his body, and as this was necessary about once every 50 years. Thoth was approximately 50,000 years old at the time of writing. He was 20,000 years old at the time of the sinking of Atlantis. Therefore, the writing of the tablets must have occurred around 20,000 years ago. Thoth lay his original body beneath the flower of light to be taken up again when he desires and sends his consciousness into other bodies through birth. He says definitely that he will rise again in the flesh in a time yet to come. This time mentioned is spoken of later in the tablets when the invaders from outer space attacked the earth. The secrets which he left were the great ship of war beneath the Sphinx and the secret of the pyramids. The men of Chem, or Egypt, who were left as guards, have faithfully fulfilled the command and still guard the secrets. The arcane wisdom he gave them has enabled them to protect the secrets from the people who came after. The people of Thoth were not the mass of Atlanteans, but the group which lived on Undal and comprised the scientific, philosophic, and priest classes. They had learned to seek knowledge as its source, the Akashic records. The children of light came among them at times and taught them wisdom which enabled them to take the next step forward. The power of the eternal fire was the fire of the universal consciousness. Thothmes, father of Thoth, was high priest of Undal, the mouthpiece of the children of light and the dweller on Unal, to the kings and people of the islands. Thoth was taught the mysteries which had been retained in the secret archives of the temple. He had developed in the past to such a degree that he readily grasped the truths which were taught him. The desire for ultimate knowledge aroused such tremendous forces and placed him on such a plane of vibration that the dweller became conscious of him. The dweller did not have the form or shape that man now has, but occupied a body similar to the bodies occupied by consciousness during the earliest part of the first cycle, the globular body. The light and force emitted by such a body was too great for the average human to stand. Only a consciousness on a high plane of vibration could stand it and still remain material. The dweller could see in Thoth one who was ready to have the spark of light fanned into flame. The arousing of the flame brought to Thoth life stronger than the life of ordinary men. For as he grew in knowledge, he was shown the path to the halls of Amenti, where the flower of life force of this planet is concentrated. Standing before the lords of life and death, He received the key of life and death with power to take up life or lay it down at will. With the attaining of power over life and death, Thoth was able to lay down his body and at will travel to the farthermost extensions of this space-time. After tasting of the wisdom of the cosmos, he found that it was centered in the hearts or minds of men. There he found greater mysteries, for it is through man that the cosmos extends into unexplored territory. Thoth was born about 20,000 years before the sinking of Atlantis, but because he had accepted a particular work, he did not pass on as others did who had gained the first illumination. Those who had been around him in youth passed on to Venus to be replaced by a wave of consciousness from Mars. The later wave of consciousness was such that they could not be trusted with the science and wisdom of the earlier Atlanteans, for they would have misused it. The dwellers spoke the word of power, which was heard by the lords of the cycles dwelling in Amenti, and they, hearing, directed the balance of the earth into new channels, causing the land to sink, carrying with it the science and knowledge which the mass of people had. This knowledge, though nothing in comparison to the knowledge of the children of light, was yet too great to remain in the hands of undeveloped ones. The flower of fire is not in the flower of the fire of life, but the pyramid of cold fire, which is the balance of the earth. The temple of light was not the temple of Unal, but the outer temple of the priesthood on Undal. The temple of Unal was never referred to as a temple, but only as the gateway or place of the dweller. Knowing of what it was composed, it was never thought of as being subject to destruction, and was therefore not considered in the sinking. Only a few of the wise men of Undal were left living when the rest of the land sank. The land of the hairy barbarians is the land now known as Egypt. Kim was the first of learning established by the Atlanteans. From there, they later sent emissaries to other barbarous tribes in different parts of the earth's surface. This was the plan mentioned, to use Kim as the central home of the new race wisdom. The ship of the master was a ship capable of traveling between planets and was armed with weapons that could destroy every living thing on Earth's surface if used at full power. In the atmosphere, it was driven by atomic motors. But outside the heaviside layer, it could be moved by thought, not only between planets, but into any space the mind of the pilot could visualize. Its structure was such that its materiality raised or lowered in vibration as the will of the operator commanded. As Thoth left the island of Unal, although he does not mention it, Undal had already sank. The great temple or place of the dweller also sank, but was not destroyed. The barbarians, upon meeting Thoth and his followers, the Atlanteans, attempted to kill them, but were struck motionless by a paralyzing ray from Thoth's staff, or rod of power. This rod was capable of transmitting or casting forth hundreds of different manifestations of force directed by the will of the holder. The apparent supernatural power of Thoth caused the barbarians to submit to him, and his statement to them that he was a child of the sun is the basis for the worship of the sun among many ancient races. Thoth was, of course, referring to the spiritual sun. It took many years to establish the new seat of the children of the sun, but when this was completed, emissaries were sent to other races to teach and guide them. As time passed, Thoth found it necessary to open a passage to Amenti for the renewal of his body, for even though filled with power, after hundreds of years, it began to disintegrate. This was necessary because his work was not yet finished. After a long period of time, the barbarians of Kim developed in consciousness until they could go forward without the aid of Thoth. Thoth plans to enter the halls of Amenti and place his body under the flower of life, while his consciousness goes elsewhere. The entrance to Amenti is below the Great Pyramid of Cheops, or Khufu, built by changing the atomic structure of stone until it became very light, and then after it was in place, changing it again. Beneath the pyramid is the fourth room, connected with the apex of the pyramid by a central shaft or well. In the upper portions of the shaft is a lens of crystal through which rays from the force chamber are directed. These are bent into time-space and curving open a dimensional pathway from beneath the pyramid to the halls of Amenti, which, though in concurrent movement in space with the earth, exists in its own space. The hidden chambers are the ones spoken of in the book on the Great Pyramid. The sarcophagus connects with the central shaft. When one lies in it a specified length of time, his body is transported down the shaft to the central force chamber. The knowledge of this was preserved in later years, but debased into a ritual of initiation. It was first necessary to coat the body with a certain ointment for the occupant to be transported, and the knowledge of this was not retained by the later Egyptians. The Great Pyramid is indestructible. If its inner parts were disturbed, forces would be let loose by the guardians, which would destroy anyone or thing which came against it. Thoth later incarnated as Hermes and as other great teachers, though not always on earth. Thoth leaves with the statement that those that come after will, in time, be able to tread the same path. That is the end of Tablet 1. Peace and blessings to you all.